Welcome back to Literary News. I'm your host, Ron Von Van, here to bring you the Facts and Figures segment. Today we got some real doozies for you. You all know how it works. I'll list off our facts for today, and you can learn a little something on your morning commute and dazzle those coworkers of yours. And don't forget, today is your last chance to enter to win the $25 gift card to the new Maid's Green Gables gift shop. So light up them telephone lines for me for your chance to win. The number is 231-224-7895. Alrighty, here we go. It's our facts for days. Number 1. Sherlock Holmes, in fact, never said elementary, my dear Watson. Can you believe that, people? That's got one of the most quoted things that old Sherlock ever said, and here we find out he never actually said it. Alright, now fact number 2. Did you know that if it weren't for the Page Company of Boston, we may never have met the freckled redhead girl who's stolen our hearts generation after generation? When L.M. Montgomery wrote her masterpiece, Anne of Green Gables, every publisher sent her to turn it down. Yep, you heard that right. What did she do? She stuffed it away in a hat pocket for 2 years before pulling it out for one last try. Her last resort was the Page Company of Boston, who accepted and published her book. And what a relief it is to know they did, isn't it, folks? Yes, it is. Alright, number 3. Okay, we've all watched or at least heard of the smashing TV show Downton Abbey has taken the world by storm. You know, we love the story and the characters. But have you ever thought about how much money was found in there to shoot the show? Well, according to the World of Downton Abbey, each episode cost around £1 million to produce. Isn't that crazy? That's a lot of money. That's too much money, I'd say. But my wife would differ with me. Anyways. Alright, number 4. Some say that the 1995 version of Pride and Prejudice is the best, and yes, my wife does think so. But did you know that Susanna Harker, who played Jane Bennet, has some previous experience in the role? Yes, indeedy. Her mother, Polly Adams, has also played Jane Bennet, but in the 1967 version. That's what I like, keep it in the family. Alright, and our final fact is a real interesting one. I never knew this, folks, and it was very interesting to find out. It is the famed author, Charles Dickens. According to Reddit.com, Dickens had a secret door inside his home in the form of a fake bookcase. Now that is cool. And these so-called books that were on the shelf included titles such as The Life of a Cat in 7 volumes. Well, that is an interesting book to choose, and in 7 volumes too. And if you think that perhaps you might want to go out and read that Life of a Cat in 7 volumes, you can't, because he made it up. Isn't that crazy? Crazy things authors can do these days. Okay, we're ready to go to the phone, so we should decide who will drive away with this gift card. All you need to do is answer 3 trivia questions correctly, and you will be our winner. Okay. First caller is Diana from Pennsylvania. Good morning, Diana. Glad to have you.
Yeah, just get to the questions. I'm running late.
Oh, sure. How did the first season of Poldark end?
Poldark? I never stayed long to find out. Later.
Hello? Hello? Okay. Next up is Maria from Boise, Idaho. Hello, Maria.
Hello, Ron. Thanks for taking my call.
You betcha. Are you ready to win this prize?
I sure am.
Okay, here's your first question. Name all 7 Von Trapp children. Go.
I know this one. Let's see. Gretel, Hansel, Bridget, Mary, Boudica and Henrik.
No, that's wrong.
Oh, really? Oh, all right.
Yeah, well, thanks anyway for your call, Maria. Better luck next time. Okay, our next caller is Joe in California. How are you, Joe?
Not bad, not bad.
Great. Okay, your question is, who was the youngest Crowley daughter from Downton Abbey?
From the Abbey? Maria. Or, was it Sister Margareta?
Neither. We're talking about Downton Abbey.
Well, I don't know if it was downtown or uptown. They just call it the Abbey.
Okay. Yes, well, I'm sorry. That's the wrong answer. Thank you. Okay. Next caller is Sally from Texas. Hello, Sally.
Hi, y'all. How you doing, Ron?
I'm doing fine, Sally. Thank you very much. Okay, your question is, the actor who played Mr. Bingley in the 2005 Pride and Prejudice film also played in the first season of Cranford, but what was his character's name?
Cranford, you say?
Yes.
Dr. Harrison?
Yes, thank you, Sally. You are 2 right answers away from that prize.
How exciting!
Yes, very exciting. Now, your next question is, in the movie Under the Greenwood Tree, what instrument was introduced to the village?
What instrument? A harmonica? No, it wasn't a harmonica. It's a, it was a harmon?
Yes.
A harp. That's it. It is a harp.
No, I'm sorry. It's a harmonium.
A what?
A harmonium.
No, it ain't.
Yes, it is.
There ain't no such thing as no harmonium.
Yes, there is. It's like an organ or a harpsichord.
I said harp, so I got it right. I won?
No. The correct answer was... Never mind. We have to go to another caller. Sorry, Sally. Okay, alright. Okay, hello, Harper from Boston. How's the weather up there?
Just on our way out to the harbor. Hey, Marge, where'd you put the car keys?
Well, can you tell me what one of Dorcas Lane's one weaknesses were?
Who?
Dorcas Lane from Loch Rise to Canterford.
Never heard of it.
It's from the it's from the TV series.
No, sir, I never watched TV. Marge and I can never get the clicker to work. Oh, Marge, I found the car keys.
Oh, okay, we'll go on to our next caller. Simon, we have Simon from England. Now, wow, this will be something. Okay, hello, Simon. How is it in the land of the BBC?
Good morning, Ron. It's always doing well over here.
Well, I'm just thrilled you called. You just don't know. You just made my day, Simon. Okay, ready to answer the questions you can probably answer in your sleep?
Well, I don't know about that, if it's true or not. I actually hate period drama with a passion.
You do?
Yes, you see, I,
Wait, how is that possible?
Well, you see, I'm more interested in the fantasy genre myself, but I thought I'd give myself a challenge, try something new, see if I could catch something.
I'll save you the embarrassment. Next caller. Hello, Janet.
Yes.
Please, give me some right answers, Janet.
I'll try my best.
Okay, this one is easy. Who wrote Pride and Prejudice? Just keep it simple.
Jane Austen.
Yes. Okay. And stay with me now. What is the name of Ross Poldark's wife? Stay with me, Janet. Stay with me.
Demelza?
Yes! Woohoo! Okay, just one more, Janet.
I never won one of these before, so it's kind of exciting.
Yes, it is. It's very exciting, Janet. I'm so happy for you. Okay. All right. We have only one more question. Okay. Last question. Who did Jo March from Little Women marry? Okay, remember. Who did Jo March from Little Women marry? Go.
That's easy. I read that book like 500 times. She marries Laurie.
I'm so glad you... What'd you say?
Laurie, you know, the boy next door, she marries Laurie.
No! Cut to a commercial break! No.
Do you ever wish you could escape your life and run away to the highlands of Scotland, weaning baskets while you tend a herd of sheep and keep up a local bookstore? Well, now you can. All the Specific Dream Lives now offers alternate lives that can be rented for just $600 a week. Go to our website and choose your new life today.
I tried all the Specific Dream Lives, and now I'm living the dream on a deserted island with only animals for friends.
Find your new life today. Just call 777-590-5432. That's 777-590-DREAM.
Bert! Take down that number!
We interrupt this message to bring you The Maidens of Green Gables.
To give you a helping hand to pull you off the side of the cliff that you were hanging off of last week. And who knows, might drop you back off of it again.
Yes.
But for now, I'll give you a helping hand. We are in our office for this reading. Our second bedroom that we've turned into our office slash
Creative room.
Yes.
Which we just cleaned up and looks quite nice.
Yes, it does.
It was quite a mess of a day.
And we are drinking coffee.
Indeed. Except mine's on the other side of the room where I don't wish to move. So Catherine is drinking coffee. And I am dreaming of mine. Loving me! Yeah. Yes, anyways.
So, chapter 20, The Eagle and the Fox.
Marguerite's breath stopped short. She seemed to feel, and picking up from last week when Marguerite's hiding in the loft thingy, and Chauvelin is downstairs, and they hear a voice singing lustily, God Save the King. Yeah. Marguerite's breath stopped short. She seemed to feel very life standing still momentarily while she listened to that voice and to that song. In the singer she had recognized her husband. Chauvelin, too, had heard it, for he darted a quick glance toward his door, and hurriedly took up his broad-brimmed hat and clapped it over his head. The voice drew nearer. For one brief second, the wild desire seized Marguerite to rush down the steps and fly across the room to stop that song at any cost, to beg the cheerful singer to fly for his life before it be too late. She checked the impulse just in time. Chauvelin would stop her before she reached the door, and moreover, she had no idea if he had any soldiers posted within his call. Her impetuous act might prove the death signal of the men she would have died to save. Long to reign over us, God save the king, sang the voice more lustily than ever. The next moment the door was thrown open, and there was dead silence for a second or two. Marguerite could not see the door. She held her breath, trying to imagine what was happening. Percy Blakeney, on entering, had, of course, at once caught sight of the curate at the table. His hesitation lasted less than 5 seconds, and the next moment Marguerite's his tall figure crossing the room, whilst he called in a loud, cheerful voice. "Hello there! No one about? Where's that fool Brogard?" He wore the magnificent coat and riding suit which he had on when Marguerite last saw him at Richmond so many hours ago. As usual, his get-up was absolutely irreproachable. The fine mixed-in lace at his neck and wrists was immaculate in its gossamer daintiness. His hands looked slender and white, his fair hair was carefully brushed, and he carried his eyeglass with his usual affected gesture. In fact, at this moment, Sir Percy Blakeney, Baronet, might have been on his way to a garden party with the Prince of Wales instead of deliberately, cold-bloodedly running his head in a trap, set for him by his deadliest enemy. He stood for a moment in the middle of the room, whilst Marguerite, absolutely paralyzed with horror, seemed unable even to breathe. Every moment she expected that Chauvelin would give a signal, that the place would fill with soldiers, and she would rush down and help Percy to save his life dearly. As he stood there, suavely unconscious, she nearly screamed out to him, "Fly, Percy! It's your deadly enemy! Fly before it's too late!" But she had not time even to do that, for the next moment Blakeney quietly walked to the table, and jovially clapped the curate on the back, said in his own drowly, affected way, "Oddsfish, Monsieur Chauvelin, I vow I never thought of meeting you here." Chauvelin, who had been in the very act of conveying soup to his mouth, fairly choked.
Hilarious.
His thin face became absolutely purple, and a violent fit of coughing saved this cunning representative of France from betraying the most boundless surprise he had ever experienced. There was no doubt that this bold move on the part of the enemy had been wholly unexpected, as far as he was concerned, and the daring imprudence of it completely nonplussed him for the moment. Obviously, he had not taken the precaution of having the inn surrounded by soldiers. Blakeney had evidently guessed that much, and no doubt his resourceful brain had already formed some plan by which he could turn this unexpected interview to account. Marguerite up in the loft had not moved. She had made a solemn promise to Sir Andrew not to speak to her husband before strangers, and she had sufficient self-control not to throw herself unreasoningly and impulsively across his plans. To sit still and watch these two men together was a terrible trial of fortitude. Marguerite had heard Chauvelin give the orders for the patrolling of all the roads. She knew that if Percy now left the Chagres, in whichever direction he happened to go, he could not go far without being sighted by some of Captain Gently's men on patrol. On the other hand, if he stayed, then Degas would have time to come back with the half-dozen men Chauvelin had specially ordered. The trap was closing in, and Marguerite could do nothing but watch and wonder. The two men looked such a strange contrast, and of the two it was Chauvelin who exhibited a slight touch of fear. Marguerite knew him well enough to guess what was passing in his mind. He had no fear for his own person, although he certainly was alone in a lonely inn with a man who was powerfully built, and who was daring and reckless beyond the bounds of probability. She knew that Chauvelin willingly had braved perilous encounters for the sake of the cause he had at heart. What he did fear was that this impudent Englishman She knew that Chauvelin would willingly have braved perilous encounters for the sake of the cause he had at heart. What he did fear was that this impudent Englishman would, by knocking him down, double his own chances of escape. The underlings might not succeed so well in capturing the Scarlet Pimpernel, when not directed by the cunning hand and the shrewd brain which had deadly hate for an incentive. Evidently, however, the representative of the French government had nothing to fear for the moment at the hands of his powerful adversary. Blakeney, with his most inane laugh and pleasant good nature, was solemnly patting him on the back. "I am so awfully sorry," he was saying cheerfully. "So very sorry. I seem to have upset you. Eating soup, too. A nasty, awkward thing of soup. Well, begad. A friend of mine died once, choked, just like you, with a spoonful of soup." And he smiled shyly, good-humouredly down at Chauvelin. "Odds life," he continued, as soon as the latter had somewhat recovered himself. "Beastly hole this, ain't it now? La, you don't mind?" he added, apologetically, as he sat down at the chair close to the table and drew the soup tureen towards him. "That fool Braga seems to be asleep or something." There was a second plate on the table, and he calmly helped himself to soup, then poured himself out a glass of wine. For a moment, Marguerite wondered what Chauvelin would do. His disguise was so good that perhaps he meant, on recovering himself, to deny his identity, but Chauvelin was too astute to make such an obviously false and childish move, and already he too had stretched out his hand and said pleasantly, "I am indeed charmed to see you, Sir Percy. You must excuse me. I thought you the other side of the channel. Sudden surprise almost took my breath away." "La," said Sir Percy with a good-humoured grin. "It did that quite, didn't it, Chaubertine? Pardon me, Chauvelin. Oh, I beg your pardon 1,000 times. Yes, Chauvelin, of course. I never could cotton to foreign names."
What did he say?
Mr. Chaubertine instead of Chauvelin. I remember that part. He was calmly eating his soup, laughing with pleasant good humour, as if he had come all the way to Calais for the express purpose of enjoying supper at this filthy inn in the company of his arch-enemy. For a moment Marguerite wondered why Percy did not knock the little Frenchman down then and there, and no doubt something of the sort must have darted through his mind, for every now and then his lazy eyes seemed to flash ominously as they rested on the slight figure of Chauvelin, who had now quite recovered himself and was also calmly eating his soup. But the keen brain which had planned and carried through so many daring plots was too far-seeing to take unnecessary risks. This place, after all, might be infested with spies. The innkeeper might be in Chauvelin's pay. One call on Chauvelin's part might bring 20 men about Blakeney's ears for aught he knew. He might be caught and trapped before he could help, or at least warn the fugitives. This he would not risk. He meant to help the others to get them safely away, for he had pledged his word to them, his word he would keep. And whilst he ate and chatted, he thought and planned, whilst up in the loft the poor anxious woman racked her brain as to what she should do, and endured agonies of longing to rush down to him, yet not daring to move for fear of upsetting his plans. "I didn't know," Blakeney was saying jovially, "that you were in holy orders." Stammered Chauvelin, the calm impudence of his antagonist had evidently thrown him off his usual balance. "But la, I should have known you anywhere," continued Sir Percy placidly, as he poured himself out another glass of wine. "The wig and hat have changed you a bit." "Do you think so?" "Lad, they alter a man so, but begad, I hope you don't mind my having made the remark." "Dashed bad form making remarks. I hope you don't mind." No, not at all. I hope they make me as well," said Chauvelin, hurriedly changing the topic of conversation. Blakeney, with much deliberation, finished his plate of soup, drank his glass of wine, and momentarily it seemed to Marguerite as if he glanced quickly all around the room. "Quite well, thank you," he said at last dryly. There was a pause, during which Marguerite could watch these two antagonists who, evidently in their own minds, were measuring themselves against one another. She could see Percy almost full face where he sat at the table, not 10 yards from where she herself was crouching, puzzled, not knowing what to do or what she should think. She had quite controlled her impulse by now of rushing down and disclosing herself to her husband. A man capable of acting a part in the way he was doing at the present moment did not need a woman's word to warn him to be cautious. Marguerite indulged in the luxury, dear to every tender woman's heart, of looking at the man she loved. She looked through the tattered curtain, across at the handsome face of her husband, in whose lazy blue eyes, and behind whose inane smile, she could now so plainly see the strength, energy, and resourcefulness which had caused Scarlet Pimpernel to be reverenced and trusted by his followers. "There are 19 of us ready to lay down our lives for your husband, Lady Blakeney," Sir Andrew said to her, and as she looked at the forehead, low but square and broad, the eyes blue yet deep-set and intense, the whole aspect of the man of indomitable energy, hiding behind a perfectly acted comedy, his almost superhuman strength of will and marvellous ingenuity, she understood the fascination which he exercised over his followers, for had he not also cast his spells over her heart and imagination? Chauvelin, who was trying to conceal his impatience beneath his usual urbane manner, threw a quick look at his watch. Degas should not be long, another 2 or 3 minutes, and this impudent Englishman will be secure in the keeping of half a dozen of Captain Jutley's most trusted men. Were you on your way to Paris, Sir Percy? He asked carelessly. Oh, life, no, replied Blakeney with a laugh. Only as far as Lily, and not Perry for me. Beast, I come from place Paris just now. Mr. Chaubertin beg pardon, Chauvelin. Not for an English gentleman like yourself, Sir Percy, rejoined Chauvelin sarcastically, who takes no interest in the conflict that is raging there. La, you see, it is no business of mine, and our dashed government is all on your side of the business. Old Pitt didn't dare say boo to a goose. You are an important, sir, he added, as Chauvelin once again took out his watch. An important, perhaps. I pray you take no heed of me, my time's my own. He rose from the table and dragged a chair to the hearth. Once more, Margaret was terribly tempted to go to him, for time was getting on. Degas might be back at any moment, with his men. Percy did not know that, and oh, how horrible it all was, and how helpless she felt. I am in no hurry, continued Percy pleasantly, but la, I don't wish to spend any more time than I could help in this godforsaken hole, but begad, sir, he added, as Chauvelin had surreptitiously looked at his watch for the third time. That watch of yours won't go any faster for all the looking you give it. You are expecting a friend, maybe? Aye, a friend. Not a lady, I trust, Monsieur l'Abbé, laughed Blakeney. So the Holy Church does not allow... what? But how? But I say, come by the fire. It's getting dashed cold. He kicked the fire with the heel of his boot, making the logs blaze in the old hearth. He seemed in no hurry to go, and apparently was quite unconscious of his immediate danger. He dragged another chair to the fire, and Chauvelin's impatience was by now getting quite out of control. Beyond control. Sat down beside the hearth in such a way as to command the view of the door. Degas had been gone nearly a quarter of an hour. It was quite plain to Margaret's aching senses that as soon as he arrived, Chauvelin would abandon all his other plans with regard to the fugitives and capture some impudent Scarlet Pimpernel at once. "Hey, Monsieur Chauvelin," the latter was saying airily, "tell me, I pray you, is your friend pretty? Dash smart, these little French women sometimes, what? But I protest I need not ask," he added as he carelessly strode back to the But I protest I need not ask, he added as he carelessly strode back towards the supper table. Any man has a taste the church has never been backward, eh? But Chauvelin was not listening. His every faculty was now concentrated on that door through which presently Degas would enter. Marguerite's thoughts, too, were centered there, for her ears had suddenly caught, through the stillness of the night, the sound of numerous and measured treads some distance away. It was Degas and his men. Another 3 minutes and they will be there. Another 3 minutes and the awful thing would have occurred. The brave eagle would have fallen into the ferret's trap. She would have moved now and screamed, but she dared not, for while she heard the soldiers approaching, she was looking at Percy and watching his every movement. He was standing by a table whereupon the remnants of the supper, plates, glasses, spoons, salt and pepper pots, were scattered pell-mell. His back was turned to Chauvelin, and he was still prattling along in his own affected and inane way, but from his pocket he had taken his snuff-box, and quickly and suddenly he emptied the contents of the pepper-pot into it. Then he again turned with an inane laugh to Chauvelin. "Eh, did you speak, sir?" Chauvelin had been too intent on listening to the sound of the approaching footsteps to notice what his cunning adversary had been doing. He now pulled himself together, trying to look unconcerned in the very midst of his anticipated triumph. "No," he said presently. "That is, as you were saying, Sir Percy." "I was saying," said Blakeney, going up to Chauvelin by the fire, "that the Jew in Piccadilly has sold me better snuff this time than I have ever tasted. Will you honour me, Monsieur l'Abbé?" He stood close to Chauvelin in his own careless, debonair way, holding out his snuff-box to his arch-enemy. Chauvelin, who, as he had told Marguerite once, had seen a trick or two in his day, had never dreamed of this one. With one ear fixed on those fast-approaching footsteps, one eye turned to that door where Degas and his men would presently appear, lulled into false security by the impudent Englishman's airy manner, he never even remotely guessed the trick which was being played upon him. He took a pinch of snuff. Only he who has ever by accident sniffed vigorously a dose of pepper can have the faintest conception of the hopeless condition in which such a sniff would reduce any human being. Chauvelin felt as if his head would burst. Sneeze after sneeze seemed nearly to choke him. He was blind, deaf, and dumb for the moment, and during that moment Blakeney quietly, without the slightest haste, took off his hat, took some money out of his pocket, which he left on the table, then calmly stalked out of the room. You want to read?
Could you read a little more?
Spares. Chapter 26, pardon me. Chapter 26. The Jew. It took Marguerite some time to collect her scattered senses. The whole of this last short episode had taken place in less than a minute, and Degas and his soldiers were still about 200 yards away from the Chagris. When she realized what had happened, a curious mixture of joy and wonder filled her heart. It was all so neat, so ingenious. Chauvelin was still absolutely helpless, far more so than he could ever have been under a blow from the fist, for now he could neither see, nor hear, nor speak, whilst his cunning adversary had quietly slipped through his fingers. Blakeney was gone, obviously to try and join the fugitives at the Père Blanche's hut. For the moment, true, Chauvelin was helpless. For the moment, the daring Pimpernel had not been caught by Degas and his men. But all the roads and the beach were patrolled. Every place was watched, and every stranger kept in sight. How far could Percy go, thus arrayed in his gorgeous clothes, without being sighted and followed? Now she blamed herself terribly for not having gone down to him sooner, and given him that word of warning and of love which, perhaps, after all, he needed. He could not know of the orders which Chauvelin had given for his capture, and even now, perhaps. But before all these horrible thoughts had taken concrete form in her brain, she heard the groundings of arms outside, close to the door, and Degas's voice shouting, "Halt!" to his men. Chauvelin had partially recovered. His sneezing had become less violent, and he had struggled to his feet. He managed to reach the door just as Degas' knock was heard on the outside. Chauvelin threw open the door, and before his secretary could say a word, he had managed to stammer between two sneezes, "A tall stranger! Quick! And did you see him?" "Where, citizen?" asked Degas in surprise. "Here, ma'am, through that door, not 5 minutes ago." "We saw nothing, citizen. The moon is not yet up, and you were just 5 minutes too late, my friend," said Chauvelin with concentrated fury. "Citizen, you did what I ordered you to do," said Chauvelin with impatience. "I know that, but you are a precious long time about it. Fortunately, there's not much time done, or it had fared ill with you, citizen Degas." Degas turned a little pale. There was so much rage and hatred in his superior's whole attitude. The tall stranger, citizen," he stammered, "was here in this room 5 minutes ago, having supper at that table. Dash his impudence! For obvious reasons, I dare not tackle him alone. Margaret is too big a fool, and that cursed Englishman appears..."
I dare not tackle. Oh, okay. I thought he was making excuses for himself.
No. "Margaret is too big a fool, and that cursed Englishman appears to have the strength of a bullock, and so he slipped away under your very nose. He cannot go far without being sighted, citizen." "Ah? Captain Gently sent 40 men as reinforcements for the patrol duty. 20 went down to the beach. He again assured me that the watch had been constant all day, and that no stranger could possibly get to the beach or reach a boat without being sighted." "That's good. Do the men know their work?" "They have had very clear orders, citizen, and I myself spoke to those who are about to start. They are to shadow, as secretly as possible, any stranger they may see, especially if he be tall, or stoop as if he would disguise his height." "In no case to detain such a person, of course," said Chauvelin eagerly. "That impudent Count Pimpernel will slip through the clumsy fingers. We must let him get to the Père Blanche's hut now. There surround and capture him." "The men understand that, citizen, and also that as soon as the tall stranger has been sighted, he must be shadowed whilst once managed to turn straight back and report to you." "That is right," said Chauvelin, rubbing his hands, well pleased. "I have further news for you, citizen." "What is it?" "A tall Englishman has had a long conversation about 3/4 of an hour ago with a Jew, Reuben by name, who lives not 10 paces from here." "Yes, and?" queried Chauvelin impatiently. "The conversation was all about a horse and cart, which the tall Englishman wished to hire, and which was to have been ready for him by 11 o'clock. It is past that now. Where does that Reuben live?" "A few minutes' walk from his door. Send one of the men to find out the stranger has driven off from Reuben's cart." "Yes, citizen." Degas went to give the necessary orders to one of his men. Not a word of this conversation between him and Chauvelin had escaped Marguerite, and every word they had spoken seemed to strike at her heart with terrible hopelessness and dark foreboding. She had come all this way, and with such high hopes and firm determination to help her husband, and so far she had been able to do nothing but to watch with a heart breaking with anguish the meshes of a deadly net closing round the daring Scarlet Pimpernel. He could not now advance many steps without spying eyes to track and announce him. Her own helplessness struck her with a terrible sense of utter disappointment. The possibility of being of the slightest use to her husband had become almost nil, and her only hope rested in being allowed to share his fate, whatever it might ultimately be. For the moment, even her chance of ever seeing the man she loved again had become a remote one. Still, she was determined to keep a close watch over his enemy, and a vague hope filled her heart that while she kept Chauvelin in sight, Percy's fate might still be hanging in the balance. Degas had left Chauvelin moodily pacing up and down the room, whilst he himself waited outside for the return of the man whom he had sent in search of Reuben. Thus several minutes went by. Chauvelin was evidently devoured by impatience. Apparently he trusted no one. This last trick paid upon him by the daring of Count Pimpernel had made him suddenly doubtful of success, unless he himself was there to watch, direct, and superintend the capture of this imprudent Englishman. About 5 minutes later, Degas returned, followed by an elderly Jew in a dirty, threadbare gabardine worn greasy around the shoulders. His red hair, which he wore after the fashion of the Polish Jews, with the corkscrew curls each side of his face, was plentifully sprinkled with grey. A general coating of grime about his cheeks and chin gave him a particularly dirty and loathsome appearance. He had the habitual stoop those of his race affected with mock humility in past centuries, before the dawn of equality and freedom in matters of faith, and he walked behind Degas with a particular shuffling gait, which has remained the characteristic of the Jew trader in continental Europe to this day. Chauvelin, who had all the Frenchman's prejudice against the despised race, motioned to the fellow to keep at a respectful distance. The group of the three men was standing just underneath the hanging oil lamp and monitoring a clear view of them all. "Is this the man?" asked Chauvelin. "No, citizen," replied Degas. "Reuben could not be found, so presumably his cart has gone with the stranger. Well, this man here seems to know something, which he is willing to sell for a consideration." "Ah," said Chauvelin, turning away in disgust from the loathsome specimen of humanity before him. The Jew, with characteristic patience, stood humbly on one side, leaning on a thick-knotted staff, his greasy, broad-brimmed hat casting a deep shadow over his grimy face, waiting for the noble excellency to deign to put some question to him. "The citizen tells me," said Chauvelin peremptorily to him, "that you know something of my friend, the tall Englishman whom I desire to meet. Morbleu, keep your distance, man," he added hurriedly, as the Jew took a quick and eager step forward. "Yes, your excellency," replied the Jew, who spoke the language with that particular lisp which denotes Eastern origin. "I and Reuben Goldstein met a tall Englishman on the road close by here this evening." "Did you speak to him?" "He spoke to us, your excellency. He wanted to know if he could hire a cart and a horse to go down along the St. Martin Road to a place he wanted to reach tonight." "What did you say?" "I did not say anything." "I did not say anything," said the Jew in an injured tone. "Reuben Goldstein, that accursed traitor, that son of Belial, cut it, that short man," interrupted Chauvelin roughly, "and go on with your story." "He took the words out of my mouth, your excellency. When I was about to offer the wealthy Englishman my horse and cart to take him wheresoever he chose, Reuben had already spoken and offered his half-starved nag and his broken-down cart. And what did the Englishman do? He listened to Reuben Goldstein, your excellency, and put his hand in his pocket then and there and took out a handful of gold, which he showed to that descendant of Beelzebub, telling him that all that would be his, if the horse and cart were ready for him by 11 o'clock. And of course the horse and cart were ready. Well, they were ready in a manner, so to speak, your excellency. Reuben's nag is lame as usual. She refused to budge at first. It was only after a time, with plenty of kicks, that she could at last be made to move,"
That's terrible.
said the Jew with a malicious chuckle. "Then they started." "Yes, they started about 5 minutes ago. I was disgusted with that stranger's folly. An Englishman, too. He ought to have known Reuben's nag was not fit to drive. But if he had no choice—" "No choice, your excellency," protested the Jew in a rasping voice. "And I repeat to him a dozen times that my horse and cart would take quicker and more comfortably with Reuben's bag of bones. He would not listen. Reuben is such a liar and has such insinuating ways. The stranger was deceived. If he was in a hurry, he would have made better value for his money by taking my cart." "You have a horse and cart too, then?" asked Chauvelin peremptorily. "Aye, that I have, your excellency. And if your excellency wants to drive, you happen to know which way my friend went in Reuben Goldstein's cart?" Thoughtfully the Jew rubbed his dirty chin. Marguerite's heart was beating well-nigh to bursting. She had heard the peremptory question. She looked anxiously at the Jew, but could not read his face beneath the shadow of his broad-brimmed hat. Vaguely she felt somehow as if he held Percy's fate in his long, dirty hands. There was a long pause, while Chauvelin frowned impatiently for the stooping figure before him. At last the Jew slowly put his hand in his breast pocket and drew out from his capacious depths a number of silver coins. He gazed at them thoughtfully, then remarked in a quiet tone of voice, "This is what the tall stranger gave me when he drove away with Reuben, for holding my tongue about him and his doings." Chauvelin shrugged his shoulders impatiently. "How much is there?" he asked. 20 francs, your excellency," replied the Jew, "and I have been an honest man all my life." Chauvelin, without further comment, took a few gold pieces out of his own pocket, and leaving them in the palm of his hand, he allowed them to jingle as he held them out towards the Jew. "How many gold pieces are there in the palm of my hand?" he asked quietly. Evidently he had no desire to terrorize the man, but to conciliate him for his own purposes, for his manner was pleasant and suave. No doubt he feared that threats of the guillotine and various other persuasivenesses of that type might addle the old man's brains, and that he would be more likely to be useful through greed of gain than through terror of death. The eyes of the Jew shot a quick, keen glance at the golden interlocutor's hand. "At least 5, I should say, Your Excellency," he replied obsequiously. "Enough, do you think, to loosen that honest tongue of yours? What does Your Excellency wish to know? Whether your horse and cart can take me to where I can find my friend, the tall stranger, who has driven off in Reuben Goldstein's cart?" "My horse and cart can take your honour there, where you please." "To a place called the Père Blanche's hut? Your honour has guessed," said the Jew in astonishment. "You know the place?" "I know it, your honour." "Which road leads to it?" "The St. Martin road, your honour, then a footpath from there to the cliffs." "You know the road?" repeated Chauvelin roughly. "Every stone, every blade of grass, your honour," replied the Jew quietly. Chauvelin, without another word, threw the 5 pieces of gold one by one before the Jew, who knelt down on his hands and knees, struggled to collect them. One rolled away, and he had some trouble to get it, for it lodged underneath the dresser. Chauvelin quietly waited while the old man scrambled on the floor to find the piece of gold. When the Jew was again on his feet, Chauvelin said, "How soon can your horse and cart be ready?" "They're ready now, your honour." "Where?" "Not 10 minutes from this door." "Your Excellency deign to look?" "I don't want to see it. How far can you drive me in it?" "As far as the Père Blanche's hut, your honour, and further than Reuben's nag took your friend. I am sure of that. Not 2 leagues from here we shall come across that wily Reuben, his nag, his cart, and the tall stranger, all in a heap in the middle of the road." "How far is the nearest village from here?" "On the road which the Englishman took, Midquillin is the nearest village, not 2 leagues from here." There he could get fresh conveyance if he wanted to go further. "He could, if he ever got so far. Can you?" "Will your Excellency try?" said the Jew simply. "This is my intention," said Chauvelin quietly. "But remember, if you have deceived me, I shall tell off 2 of my most stalwart soldiers to give you such a beating that your breath will perhaps leave your ugly body forever. But if we find my friend the tall Englishman, either on the road or at Père Blanche's hut, there will be 10 more gold pieces for you. Do you accept the bargain?" The Jew again thoughtfully rubbed his chin. He looked at the money in his hand, then at his stern interlocutor, and at Degas, who stood silently behind him all this while. After a moment's pause, he said deliberately, "I accept." "Go and wait outside, then," said Chauvelin. "Remember to stick to your bargain, or by heaven I will keep to mine." With a final, almost abject and cringing bow, the old Jew shuffled out of the room. Chauvelin seemed pleased with his interview. He rubbed his hands together in that usual gesture of his of malleant satisfaction. "My coat and boots," he said to Degas at last. Degas went to the door and apparently gave the necessary orders, for presently a soldier entered, carrying Chauvelin's coat, boots, and hat. He took off his soutane, beneath which he was wearing close-fitting breeches and a cloth waistcoat, and began changing his attire. "You, citizen, in the meanwhile," he said to Degas, "go at Captain Gently as fast as you can, and tell him to let you have 12 men, and bring them with you along the St. Martin road, where I dare say you will soon overtake the Jew's cart with myself in it. There will be a hot work presently, if I mistake not, in the Père Blanche's hut. We shall corner our game there. I'll warrant this impudent Pimpernel has had the audacity, or the stupidity, I hardly know which, to adhere to his original plans. He's gone to meet de Tournay, St. Just, and the other traitors, which for the moment I thought perhaps he did not intend to do. When we find them, there will be a band of desperate men at bay. Some of our men will, I presume, be put hors de combat. These royalists are good swordsmen, and the Englishman is devilishly cunning, and looks very powerful. Still, we shall be at least 5 against 1. You can follow the cart closely with your men, all along the St. Martin road, through Midquillin. The Englishman is ahead of us, and not likely to look behind him." Whilst he gave these curt and concise orders, he had completed his change of attire. The priest's costume had been laid aside, and he was once more dressed in usual dark, tight-fitting clothes. At last he took up his hat. "I shall have an interesting prisoner to deliver into your hands," he said with a chuckle, as with unwonted familiarity he took Degas' arm and led him towards the door. "You won't kill him outright, eh? Friend Degas, the Père Blanche's hut is, an I not mistake, a lonely spot upon the beach, and our men will enjoy a bit of rough sport there with the wounded fox. Choose your men well, friend Degas, of the sort who would enjoy that type of sport, eh? You must see that the Scarlet Pimpernel wither a bit. What? Shrink and tremble, eh? He made an expressive gesture, whilst he laughed a low, evil laugh, which filled Marguerite's soul with sickening horror. Choose your men well, citizen Degas, he said once more, as he led his secretary finally out of the room. Oh my. He is way more evil.
Yes, indeed.
Way more evil.
Chapter 27. On the Track. Never for a moment did Marguerite Blakeney hesitate. The last sound outside the Chagris had died away in the night. She had heard Degas giving orders to his men and then starting off towards the fort to get a reinforcement of a dozen more men. 6 were not thought sufficient to capture the cunning Englishman, whose resourceful brain was even more dangerous than his valor and his strength. Then a few minutes later she heard the Jew's husky voice again, evidently shouting to his nag, then the rumble of wheels and the noise of a rickety cart bumping over the rough road. Inside the inn everything was still. Brogard and his wife, terrified of Chauvelin, had given no sign of life. They hoped to be forgotten, and at any rate to remain unperceived. Marguerite could not even hear their usual volleys of muttered oaths. She waited a moment or two longer, then she quietly slipped down the broken stairs, wrapped her dark cloak closely around her, and slipped out of the inn. The night was fairly dark, sufficiently so at any rate to hide her dark figure from view, whilst her keen ears kept count of the sound of the cart going on ahead. She hoped by keeping well within the shadow of the ditches which lined the road that she would not be seen by Degas's men when they approached, or by the patrols, which she concluded were still on duty. Thus she started to do the last stage of her weary journey alone at night and on foot, nearly 3 leagues to Miquelon, and then on to the Pierre Blancard's hut, wherever the fatal spot might be. Probably a rough road she cared not. The Jew's nag could not get on very fast, and though she was weary with mental fatigue and nerve strain, she knew that she could easily keep up with it. On a hilly road where the poor beast was sure to be half starved, would have to be allowed long and frequent rests. The road lay some distance from the sea, bordered on either side by shrubs and stunted trees, sparsely covered with meagre foliage, all turning away from the north, with their branches looking in the semi-darkness like stiff ghostly hair blown by a perpetual wind. Fortunately, the moon showed no desire to peep through the clouds. Between the clouds, and Marguerite, hugging the edge of the road and keeping close to the low line of shrubs, was fairly safe from view. Everything around her was so still, only from very far away, there came like a long, soft moan, the sound of the distant sea. The air was keen and full of brine. After that enforced period of inactivity inside the evil-smelling, squalid inn, Marguerite would have enjoyed the sweet scent of this autumnal night, and the distant melancholy rumble of the waves. She would have revelled in the calm and stillness of this lonely spot, a calm broken only at intervals by the strident and mournful cry of some distant gull, and by the creaking of the wheels sometime down the road. She would have loved the cool atmosphere, the peaceful immensity of nature in its lonely part of the coast, but her heart was too full of cruel foreboding, of a great ache and longing for a being who had become infinitely dear to her. Her feet slipped on the grassy bank, for she thought it safest not to walk near the center of the road, and she found it difficult to keep up a sharp pace along the muddy incline. She even thought it best not to keep too near to the cart. Everything was so still that the rumble of the wheels could not fail to be a safe guide. The loneliness was absolute. Already the few dim lights of Calais lay far behind, and on this road where there was not a sign of human habitation, not even the hut of a fisherman or of a woodcutter anywhere near, far away on her right was the edge of the cliff, below it the rough beach, against which the incoming tide was dashing itself with its constant distant murmur, and ahead the rumble of the wheels, bearing an implacable enemy to his triumph. Marguerite wondered at what particular spot on this lonely coast Percy could be at this moment. Not very far, surely, for he had less than a quarter of an hour's start of Chauvelin. She Chauvelin. She wondered if he knew that in this cool, ocean-scented bit of France there lurked many spies, all eager to sight his tall figure, to track him to where his unsuspecting friends waited for him, and then to close the net over him and them. Chauvelin, on the head, jolted and jostled in the Jew's vehicle, was nursing comfortable thoughts. He rubbed his hands together with content, as he thought of the web which he had woven, and through which that ambiguous, and daring Englishman could not hope to escape. As the time went on and the old Jew drove him leisurely but surely along the dark road, he felt more and more eager for the grand finale of this exciting chase after the mysterious Scarlet. Capture of the audacious plotter would be the finest leaf in Citizen Chauvelin's wreath of glory. Caught red-handed on the spot in the very act of aiding and abetting the traitors against the Republic of France, the Englishman could claim no protection from his own country. Chauvelin had, in any case, fully made up his mind that all intervention should come too late. Never for a moment did the slightest remorse enter his heart as to the terrible position in which he had placed the uncomfortable wife, who had unconsciously betrayed her husband. As a matter of fact, Chauvelin had ceased even to think of her. She had been a useful tool, that was all. The Jew's lean nag did little more than walk. She was going along at a slow jog trot, and her driver had to give her long and frequent halts. "Are we a long way yet from Micklin?" asked Chauvelin from time to time. "Not very far, Your Honour," was the uniform placid reply. "We have not yet come across your friend and mine, lying in a heap in the roadway," was Chauvelin's sarcastic comment. "Patience, noble excellency," rejoined the son of Moses. "They are ahead of us. I can see the imprint of the cartwheels driven by that traitor, that son of the Amalekite." The Amalekite! That's funny. "You are sure of the road?" "As sure as I am of the presence of those 10 gold pieces in the noble excellency's pockets, which I trust will presently be mine. As soon as I have shaken hands with my friend, the tall stranger, they will certainly be yours." "Hark, what was that?" said the Jew out suddenly. Through the stillness which had been absolute, there could now be heard distinctly the sound of horses' hoofs on the muddy road. "They are soldiers," he added in an odd whisper. "Stop a moment, I want to hear," said Chauvelin. Margaret had also heard the sound of galloping hooves coming towards the cart and towards herself. For some time she had been on the alert, thinking that Degas and his squad would soon overtake them, but these came from the opposite direction, presumably from Micklin. The darkness lent her sufficient cover. She had perceived that the cart had stopped, and with utmost caution, treading noiselessly on the soft ground, she crept a little nearer.
I better hide.
Her heart was beating fast. She was trembling in every limb. Already she had guessed what news these mounted men would bring. Every stranger on these roads or on the beach must be shadowed, especially if he be tall or stoops as if he would disguise his height. When sighted, a mounted messenger must at once ride back and report. Those had been Chauvelin's orders. Had then the tall stranger been sighted, and was this the mounted messenger come to bring the great news that the hunted hare had run its head into the noose at last? Marguerite, realizing that the car had come to a standstill, managed to slip nearer to it in the darkness. "No!" She crept close up, hoping to get within earshot to hear what the messenger had to say. She heard the quick words of challenge. "Liberté, fraternité, égalité." Then Chauvelin's quick query. "What news?" 2 men on horseback had halted beside the vehicle. Margaret could see them silhouetted against the midnight sky. She could hear their voices and the snorting of their horses, and now behind her, some little distance off, the regular measured tread of a body of advancing men, Degas and the soldiers. There had been a long pause, during which no doubt Chauvelin satisfied the men as to his identity, for presently questions and answers followed between each other in quick succession. "You have seen the stranger?" asked Chauvelin eagerly. "No, citizen, we have seen no tall stranger. We came by the edge of the cliff." Then, less than a quarter of a league beyond Micklin, we came across a rough construction of wood, which looked like the hut of a fisherman, where he might keep his tools and his nets. When we first sighted it, it seemed to be empty, and at first we thought that there was nothing suspicious about it, until we saw some smoke issuing through an aperture at the side. I dismounted and crept close to it. It was then empty, but in one corner of the hut there was a charcoal fire, and a couple of stools were also in the hut. I consulted it with my comrades, who decided that they should take cover with the horses well out of sight, and that I should remain on the watch, which I did. Well, did you see anything? About half an hour later I heard voices, citizen, and presently 2 men came along towards the edge of the cliff. They seemed to me to have come from the little road. One was young, the other quite old. They were talking in a whisper to one another, and I could not hear what they said. One was young, the other quite old. Margaret's aching heart almost stopped beating as she listened. Was the young one Armand, her brother, and the old one de Tournay? Were they the 2 fugitives who unconsciously were used as a decoy to entrap their fearless and noble rescuer? The 2 men presently went into the hut, continued the soldier, whilst Marguerite's aching nerves seemed to catch the sound of Charlotte's triumphant chuckle, and I crept nearer to it then. The hut is very roughly built, and I caught snatches of their conversation. Yes, quick, what did you hear? The old man asked the young one if he was sure that was the right place. Oh, yes, he replied, 'tis the place sure enough. And by the light of the charcoal fire he showed to his companion a paper which he carried. Here is the plan, he said, which he gave to me before I left London. We were to adhere strictly to that plan unless I heard contrary orders, and I have had none. Here is the road we followed, see? Here the fork. Here we cut across the St. Martin Road, and here is the footpath which brought us to the edge of the cliff. I must have made a slight noise then, for the young man came to the door of the hut and peered anxiously all around him. When he again joined his companion, they whispered so low that I could no longer hear them. Well, and, said Charlotte impatiently, there were 6 of us all together, patrolling that part of the beach, so we consulted together, and I thought it best that 4 should remain behind to keep the hut in sight, and I and my comrade rode back at once to make report of what we had seen. You saw nothing of the tall stranger. Nothing, citizen. If your comrades see him, what would they do? Not lose sight of him for a moment, and if he showed signs of escape or any boat came in sight, they would close in on him, and if necessary they would shoot. The firing would bring the rest of the patrol to the spot. In any case, they would not let the stranger go. I better not want the stranger hurt, not just yet, murmured Chauvelin savagely, but there you've done your best. The fates grant that I may not be too late. We met 6 men just now who have been patrolling this road for several hours. Well, they have seen no stranger either. Yet he is on ahead somewhere in a cart or else. Here, there's not a moment to lose. How far is that hut from here? About a couple of leagues, citizen. You can find it again at once without hesitation? I've absolutely no doubt, citizen. The footpath to the edge of the cliff, even in the dark. It is not a dark night, citizen, and I know I can find my way, repeated the soldier firmly. Fall in behind, then, let your comrade take both your horses back to Calais. You won't want them. Keep beside the cart and direct the Jew to drive straight ahead, then stop him within a quarter of a league of the footpath. See that he takes the most direct road. While Chauvelin spoke, Degas and his men were fast approaching, and Margaret could hear footsteps within 100 yards behind her now. She thought it unsafe to stay where she was, and unnecessarily too, as she had heard enough. She seemed suddenly to have lost all faculty, even for suffering. Her heart, her nerves, her brain seemed to have become numb after all these hours of ceaseless anguish, culminating in this awful despair. For now there was absolutely not the faintest hope. Within 2 short leagues of the spot the fugitives were waiting for their brave deliverer. He was on his way somewhere on this lonely road, and presently he would join them. Then the well-laid trap would close. 24 men, leading by one whose hatred was as deadly as his cunning was malicious, would close around the small band of fugitives and their daring leader. They would all be captured. Armand, according to Chauvelin's pledged word, would be restored to her, but her husband, Percy, whom every breath she drew she seemed to love and worship more and more, he would fall into the hands of a remorseless enemy, who had no pity for a brave heart, no admiration for the courage of a noble soul, who would show nothing but hatred for the cunning antagonist who had baffled him so long. She heard the soldier giving a few brief directions to the Jew, then she retired quickly to the edge of the road and covered beneath some low shrubs, whilst Degas and his men came up. All fell noiselessly behind the cart, and slowly they all started down the dark road. Marguerite waited until she reckoned that they were well outside the range of earshot. Then she too, in the darkness, which suddenly seemed to have become more intense, crept noiselessly along.
Seriously?
Read that.
Nah! Okay, read another chapter.
I can't read another
Yes, you
chapter.
can. Yes, you can. There's 4 chapters to read next week. Let's read the 4th one this week.
It's probably going to be even worse of a cliffhanger than this.
I don't care.
I'm seeing how bad of a ending
Just
it
do
is.
it.
No.
You're so like impulsive for once in your life. Don't read ahead. Catherine.
Okay, we can't read the next chapter.
Oh, come on.
No. No. Stay right here. It gets worse. No, not that I read ahead or anything, but just.
My stomach is literally tied in knots. Oh, my word.
Have some cake.
I ate my cake.
Well,
Oh my goodness.
I'm getting a little confused because I'm wondering how it's going to end because I remember somewhat of how it ended from reading it before, but now I'm yes. I'm a little confused with the information we have so far, how it gets to there. So.
Wasn't that absolutely ingenious of Percy with the snuff and the pepper?
Mhm.
That was absolutely hilarious. Now I love the fact how he's perfectly dressed. Like they said, he looked as if he was, so clean and perfect that it looked as if he was going to go visit the Prince of Wales or whatever.
Yeah, and he's not anxious at all.
Thanks at all, no showing a sign, any rushing, nothing at all.
So smooth.
And so well dressed.
Thinking all the time. I don't understand how you could do that. Be so smooth and act like nothing's wrong.
Just prattle
Which
on.
really wasn't necessarily even in his... Well, he doesn't know what Shovelette knows. So he needs to keep up the mask for as long as possible. Until he knows that it's no good or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I was going to say, kind of, what's the use of him even pretending he doesn't know what's going on? But, like I said, he doesn't know what Shovelette
He doesn't
knows.
know that Chauvelin knows who he is, but he probably has guessed it now. Not really that. Probably
Yeah.
has guessed it now that he
Or
was
he
at
knows
the-
he's-
that inn.
He's suspicious, at least.
Mm-hmm.
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 I wonder what happened to Sir Andrew.
Yeah.
I mean, if he had
met Sir Andrew,
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Maybe
Then he
Percy
would
met Sir Andrew.
and he would have made some. I think if he had met Sir Andrew and sent Sir Andrew off to warn Armand or whatever, then I think he would have made some sort of move to say something at least that Marguerite would have known about. Said something to allay her fears or something, or just to say or anything. Like when Chauvelin asked about his wife and he said she's fine,
Oh, I see what you mean.
or something like that.
But yet he wouldn't want to do anything that Shovelin would suspect and possibly,
No, but he wouldn't.
He wouldn't want to say anything that might possibly...
He's clever enough not to say anything. When he could have said oh yes, my wife, I left her the other morning, and she said she's quite well. She was having a water party, which I was very sorry about to lose. I don't know. He could have said something.
That doesn't say anything.
I could have said something instead of just she's quite well. It was very short.
Or he could have said, she's off on a trip. Instead of at home.
I don't know.
Or something, I don't know. Anyway,
Did anyone else notice that the first chapter, the eagle and the fox, those are two somewhat equally matched animals. It wasn't like the fox and the rabbit or something.
or the fox and the mouse,
Yeah,
like you said earlier.
it was the eagle, which is no doubt Sir Percy, and the fox, which is no doubt Chauvelin.
Yes.
Cunning devil.
It's so weird. It's chuckling all the while.
I know. You were saying Richard Armitage to play him. Richard, you need a thin hawk-like man
Richard Armitage could play him. He was
Yeah,
very
but
well as the. I can't really get the
He's like thin and creepy.
thin and creepy.
He's saying
Shovel Knight's supposed to
he
be
rubbed
right.
his thin hands together and he cackles.
I'm saying Richard
Richard
Armitage
Armitage
has
could not
fat
cackle.
hands.
I'm saying I can't.
What's wrong with your hands? Size of your hands.
I'm saying I can't see him cackling. Is what I'm saying.
No.
And rubbing his thin hands together and grinning wisely, you know.
But he could do an evil laugh.
Well, yeah.
Murmuring an evil laugh.
Yes, he could do it. We all know he could do an evil laugh from Robin Hood.
I don't know his laugh.
Okay, you know how evil.
Yes.
Yeah, so we know he can do evil.
Can you do evil?
Or even Mr. Thornton was quite, start out with not evil, but just mean. Anyways, he needs somebody different, I think. I don't know who, but no, he reminds me of,
Who?
Walleran from Wings of Dawn. doesn't
Yes,
he?
yeah, kind of, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know why, but the fact about this book is reminding me, obviously, well, not obviously, but it's reminding me of the Tale of Two Cities, which is, you know, the French Revolution, the same thing. But it's also reminding me of Ivanhoe, probably because of the appearance of a Jew, and also, I think, because, you know, Anthony Andrews played Ivanhoe as well as Sir Percy, so getting connections there.
Yeah, we should see that sometime.
What? Ivanhoe?
Yeah.
So
I
now she wants to see it.
I mean that version of Anthony Andrews. Yeah.
Yeah, I really have thought to rent it at some point.
Yes, well.
Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Uh,
Oh, also, we have the perfect person to play Sir Percy. Which we'll talk about. Well, which we'll tell you.
Save it for later.
We'll
Save it for next week.
Yeah.
Let's see.
It's hilarious that the what's his name? Did we say what the Jew's name is? Reuben is the other guy, but who is this guy?
I think it's Sid, but let me see.
Oh, he was saying that a curse from the Amalekite. You know, son of Moses. That's something very funny. Just love how she has all these characters. It kind of reminds me of Ellen Montgomery with she's always got all these people with their idiosyncrasies and their characters and stuff. It's like the Baroness also has that somewhat. Okay.
I'm sorry, what?
She reminds me of Ellen Montgomery, how, you know, Ellen Montgomery always has all these crazy characters with all their idiosyncrasies,
Yeah.
and how the Baroness also is having that with, you know, Brogard and his idiosyncrasies, and this Jew, his idiosyncrasies.
Mm-hmm.
Do they say his name?
I don't know that they do. But is this the man? It's like, no citizen. Reuben could not be found, but this man here seems to know something. This is the Jew with a yes, the Jew. Yeah, I don't think. This is Reuben Goldstein, met a tall Englishman. Yeah, so I don't think it does say his name.
Interesting.
Just it's called the Jew. That's awful. It just says that if you don't take me there, then I'm going to whip you.
Yeah. Well, no, it's if you lied to me.
Oh, okay. Well, if you lied to that, it's still.
Yeah, extra
But
evil
still.
that he's going to have the showrunner's going to have some fun, so-called fun with
Yeah.
and choose him and
he's
was
such
like,
a nice guy.
I know.
Shameful. So, definitely need someone evil to play him.
Richard Armitage could do very well, I think. I think someone else also might do very well. I don't know who. Thin, like face.
It's gonna be very sad.
When is this over?
Yes, don't know how we'll get over it.
Have to actually go back and thinking of actual posts to do.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, anything else?
I don't think so. So, what did you all think of these chapters? What, have you ever violently sniffed Pepper? I don't think we have ever done that. The only thing I can think of is the, that. Should I tell that story?
No.
Because
Not.
I don't know how I'm going to explain that one. I wonder if they had that scene in the play. That would be very hard to act, especially
You would.
on stage. I think so. Realistically, sneezing and sneezing and sneezing on stage. I mean, like off, if you're on camera or whatever, you could actually sniff it, and something. Well, I guess you could on stage too, but then you have run the risk of not recovering.
That's so funny.
That would be very funny.
Run the risk of not recovering.
Seriously, that would be hilarious if you actually sniffed it and
I'm
then
sorry, but that understudy has to come out because Mr. Williams has not
actually
recovered.
sniffed the pepper.
That's what I told you to replace it with something else.
Actual snuff. What is snuff? Is snuff tobacco?
Yes, you asked that already.
I did.
Yes.
Maybe interesting.
Alright, well, we shall wrap this up. And we'll see you all next week. Farewell.
Bye bye.